Sometimes a person chooses not what they know to be right, but what they know will hurt them. Sometimes people knowingly choose what is wrong, even when no one forces them, threatens them, or misleads them. In most cases, the choice is clear. The consequences are obvious. And yet, they still open the door they know will lead to pain. From the outside, this behavior appears meaningless, even irrational. But when you look inward, it becomes clear that this is not a simple mistake. It is a deliberate act. So why does a person choose the wrong thing, knowing it will hurt them? At first, the answers sound easy. Habit, fear, weakness. But none of these explanations fully satisfy, because this question is not really about others. It quietly turns the person back toward themselves. And that is something most people instinctively avoid. This is where Dostoevsky becomes unsettling. He does not see human beings as rational creatures seeking comfort or benefit. For him, humans are contradictory and inconsistent. Sometimes they act against their own interests simply to prove that they are free. Because choosing what is right often feels like walking a path drawn by someone else. According to Dostoevsky, humans are not truly in love with happiness, they are in love with will. And this will often expresses itself through destruction. When someone says, "This is what's better for you," a quiet resistance emerges. Accepting that goodness can feel like surrendering to a life that isn't truly one's own. So people push back. They choose pain. They choose wrongdoing. Because at least that choice feels like it belongs to them. This resistance is not only directed outward, toward advice or authority. It is also directed inward, toward the possibility of becoming better. Sometimes people do not want to improve, because improvement signals an ending. The end of pain, chaos, and uncertainty. Yet uncertainty is a place where people can hide. Someone who suffers does not have to justify their unhappiness. But someone who is happy feels pressure to maintain it. Happiness leaves no excuse behind. Dostoevsky suggests that people fear this responsibility, because happiness demands self-confrontation. It says, "You have no excuse now." And many people do not want to live without excuses. So they use their will as proof of existence. Look, they tell themselves, "I can destroy if I want to." Often, this destruction is not aimed at others, but at themselves. Self-inflicted pain still preserves a sense of control. Being the author of your own suffering feels safer than becoming the object of someone else's kindness. Because accepting kindness places a person in a position of vulnerability. To be helped means admitting that you are not self-sufficient, that you need something outside of yourself. And for many, this is more frightening than pain itself. Pain can be endured in silence. Kindness demands response. When someone offers help, understanding, or love, it creates a mirror. And in that mirror, a person is forced to see not only their wounds, but also their potential. That potential is heavy, because it asks a question that cannot be postponed forever: what will you do with this? This is why people often sabotage moments of closeness just as they arrive. They withdraw, they provoke, they destroy what could have healed them. Not because they hate goodness, but because goodness removes the safety of victimhood. A person who suffers can explain everything through pain. But a person who is cared for must take responsibility for what follows. Dostoevsky understood that for some individuals, pain is not just an experience, it is a shelter. It provides structure to chaos. It gives shape to identity. When pain disappears, so does the familiar self. And that disappearance feels like a kind of death. So people cling to suffering, not because it feels good, but because it feels known. Known pain is easier to carry than unknown possibility. This is why people return to relationships that break them, habits that ruin them, and thoughts that trap them. These are not accidents. They are acts of preservation. The person is preserving the only version of themselves they know how to be. Changing would mean stepping into a future without a script. And that kind of openness terrifies the human mind. Dostoevsky saw that people would rather repeat the same mistake than face a blank page. Because repetition confirms identity. Even failure feels safer when it is familiar. At least it says, this is still me. To improve would mean admitting that the former self was incomplete. And many people experience that admission as betrayal. They feel loyal to their suffering, as if abandoning it would erase everything they endured. In this way, pain becomes meaningful not because it elevates life, but because it explains it. Without pain, a person must create meaning actively, and creation requires courage. This is why Dostoevsky's characters often hover on the edge of redemption and then turn back. They sense that salvation would ask too much of them. It would require consistency, honesty, and the daily effort of choosing differently. Suffering, on the other hand, demands nothing new. It only demands endurance. And endurance feels noble when hope feels risky, because hope opens the door to disappointment. Pain cannot disappoint you, it only continues. In this way, people begin to trust pain more than happiness. Pain proves itself again and again. Happiness feels temporary, conditional, fragile. And when happiness leaves, it leaves behind a deeper emptiness than before. Dostoevsky understood that some people prefer steady misery to unstable joy. Not because they enjoy misery, but because it confirms their worldview. It tells them the world is hostile, life is unfair, and expectations are foolish. In this worldview, disappointment is not shocking, it is expected. An expectation reduces shock. It cushions the fall. To choose goodness, however, is to risk being wrong about everything you believed. It means admitting that things could have been different all along. That realization can be devastating, because it suggests that suffering was not inevitable. And if suffering was not inevitable, then the question arises, why did I stay? This question is unbearable for many, so they avoid it by choosing wrongly again. Each wrong choice quietly says, I had no choice. And in that lie, they find temporary peace. But Dostoevsky does not judge this behavior. He exposes it. He shows that humans are not broken machines, but wounded beings protecting themselves the only way they know how. His characters suffer not because they are evil, but because they are afraid to change the story they tell about themselves. And so, they remain faithful to their pain. Not because it frees them, but because it excuses them. This is why Dostoevsky's characters resist being saved. They reject the hand that reaches out to them, because accepting that hand means surrendering the story they have been living by. Identities built on pain do not disappear easily. When someone says, this is who I am, it is often not acceptance, but defense. And when that defense collapses, a frightening question remains, then who am I? Wrong choices silence this question. Repeating the same mistakes is not always punishment. Often, it is a way of staying in familiar territory. Familiar pain feels safe. Dostoevsky does not describe people merely becoming accustomed to suffering, but consciously choosing it. Because chosen pain feels like evidence of free will. That is why people relapse just as they begin to recover. Healing can feel like a gradual loss of control. Pain is predictable. Happiness is not. Happiness requires continuity, effort, and vulnerability. Pain has rhythm. You know when it will come, and you know when it will fade. In Dostoevsky's world, people prefer chaotic pain to structured goodness. Chaos mirrors the inner conflict they already carry. Wrong choices ease loneliness. I am not broken, the person tells themselves, the world is broken too. This thought is strange, but comforting. It divides responsibility. Choosing what is right, however, isolates a person. You must bear that decision alone. Falling is familiar. Walking upright requires courage. And people often mistake habit for freedom. The character in Notes from Underground destroys every opportunity for salvation. To be saved would mean being understood, measured, predictable. Sometimes people choose unpredictability at any cost, because it is the last remaining sign of control. Here, Dostoevsky exposes a disturbing truth. People do not always want happiness. Sometimes they flee from it. Happiness brings accountability. Pain provides excuses. Those who suffer feel entitled to mistakes. Over time, pain becomes identity. And anything that threatens that identity is rejected, even if it is good. When a person feels worthless, they make choices that confirm it. They choose what punishes them, because an inner voice whispers, "You don't deserve better." Wrong choices silence inner conflict. They hurt, but they also bring relief. At this point, the issue becomes existential. Every person lives inside a story about themselves. Right choices challenge that story. Wrong choices preserve it. Painful, but consistent. Dostoevsky asks a terrifying question. What if people sometimes choose evil, not by accident, but by will? Evil grants agency. It allows someone to say, "I did this." Even suffering feels preferable to passivity. In a world where meaning becomes shallow, pain starts to feel like proof of depth. Humans prefer pain to emptiness. As long as they feel, they believe they exist. And so, some wrong choices become declarations of existence. Perhaps humanity's greatest fear is being fully explained, fully solved, reduced to a system that always chooses correctly. Dostoevsky believed that such perfection would destroy the human soul. Humans must remain contradictory, capable of acting against their own interests. Otherwise, they become machines. If these thoughts feel uncomfortably familiar, do not dismiss them too quickly. Think about the repetitions in your life, the same mistakes, the same patterns, the same self-sabotage. Perhaps there is a choice there, conscious but unspoken. Sometimes people do not want freedom, because freedom demands responsibility, and responsibility demands self-honesty. Wrong choices delay that moment. Saying "that's just how it happened" feels safer than saying, "I chose this." For Dostoevsky, freedom is not a gift. It is a burden. And wrongdoing becomes a way of escaping it. Saying "this is who I am" feels safer than admitting, "I could be someone else." And perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: if the right choice will change you, you may fear it. Because change feels like the death of your old self. That is why people prefer the hell they know to the heaven they cannot imagine. Dostoevsky leaves the question unanswered, because his goal is not to explain, but to awaken, to leave a person alone with themselves. So here is the real question. If the right choice will transform you, are you truly ready to choose it? Do not answer too quickly, because the most honest answers often arrive only in silence.